Part 71. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 704. In a dark passage in the underground palace. AG held up the cane burning with flames and walked forward slowly with a sullen face. There was no one around him, and Nasira, who was originally with him, seemed to have separated from him, leaving him alone. "Something feels wrong here," he whispered. "I'm split apart, it's some kind of space force that seems to be here." He looked around with vigilance and thought. The red firelight reflected one side of his face slightly red. With his free hand, he gently touched something in his pocket, and his heart suddenly calmed down. "We will definitely succeed this time, it's just one step away. The last step." A look of determination returned to his face, and he strode forward. In another dark place, Nisra holds a torch, and behind him are Manas, who is fully armored, and the thousand-legged snake witch. Both of them were observing their surroundings vigilantly from time to time. "I feel a huge evil force entrenched here." The thousand-legged snake's braids swayed slightly twisted like a living creature. The three of them walked in the passage, surrounded by endless darkness. Only torches could illuminate the area within a few meters. Where the firelight did not touch, the silhouettes of beast heads occasionally appeared. Each dead apostle's eternal garden is different. Be careful. As long as we contain the power of the garden in the underground palace, we will achieve our goal. As long as AG can successfully achieve his goal, we can completely destroy this garden. Nisra whispered. The blue fire in Manas's eyes jumped a few times. "It seems that this is Wellington's real trump card. I have prepared some special methods for this, which will come in handy." The three of them were on guard, quickened their pace, and walked towards the depths of the underground palace. I don't know how long it took, but the underground palace passage gradually became wider, and some deep scratches began to appear on the ground. Some tiny writing-like things began to appear on the walls. "There seems to be writing on the wall." The thousand-legged snake walked over and gently touched the wall. "Wellington Pirstandovic," she read softly along with the caressed words. Pirstandovic, Nisra frowned immediately. This name gave him a bad feeling, as if he had heard it somewhere. "There are words at the back." The thousand-legged snake continued to stroke the back. He touched it with his fingers and at the same time softly read the handwriting on it. "Unil Garden. Unil Garden." Nisra's expression suddenly changed. "Fell into a trap. Unil Garden." This is actually, even with her status and strength, she couldn't help but feel a deep chill. There are many unsolved mysteries in the world, and Unil Garden is one of them. Rumor has it that it was an underground garden built for a man named Unil, but it is actually an underground cemetery, an underground mausoleum. No one knows who Unil is, and no one has found any record of this tomb in history. People only accidentally discovered the existence of Unil Garden underground in a lost ruins. But as a well-known forbidden place in the other world, it is famous for being a place where there is no way in or out. Isn't Unil Garden supposed to be in Australia? How could it appear here? Nasira felt her heart beating rapidly, and a sense of loss of control beyond the scope of the plan filled her heart. "We haven't gone deep enough yet. It's too late to quit now." Manas was not very nervous. He originally used semi-witchcraft to transform humans, and he had never heard of how powerful Unil Garden was before. Nisra shook her head slightly. "It's too late. If this is really Unil Garden, then the space should be distorted, and the way back will definitely not be found. Time here is even distorted, so be careful." She took out a small wooden bird and tossed it gently, and the bird immediately flew back. "Look." Manas and thousand-legged snake looked along and were suddenly a little stunned. I saw the wooden bird vibrating its wings and flying back, but it could only move back a little distance, and then it could only fly in the air on the same spot, unable to move back at all and leave the sight of several people. The space here can only move forward, not backward. I have studied the three major secret places, and this place is no exception. The only way is to move forward, Nasira said solemnly. The other two were both high-ranking wizards, so naturally they had their own confidence and pride, and they soon calmed down. If we keep going forward, we may be able to find some clues to get out of here, Nasira whispered. The three of them continued moving towards the depths of the underground palace. Wellington family in a dark space. They finally went in, the old black shadow whispered. Withdrawing his hand from the blood basin, there was a hint of exhaustion in his voice. Is that Unil Garden? It is said that there is an underground cemetery in Australia that can move on its own like a living thing. The lazy female voice seemed to finally have some interest. To be precise, that is the biggest secret of our family. Everyone knows that there is an Unil Garden in Australia, but no one knows that there is a passage in our family's underground palace that connects to the second Unil Garden. The third black shadow, the neutral voice explained. The second one? You know so clearly, have you ever gone in? A lazy female voice asked curiously. No, even the head of the house has never gone in. Don't talk about me. The head of the house once strictly warned me not to try to go in, otherwise it will be very troublesome. Not even the head of the family has gone in. The other two people were surprised. To be precise, no one has ever gone in. The entrance to the passage has always been there, and I don't know what's inside. Even the head of the family only heard the instructions from our ancestors, never go in. No one knows. The reason is that it has been passed down from generation to generation anyway, the neutral voice explained. So I don't know what's in it, so don't ask me. The scene of AG and several people entering the underground palace one after another was being replayed in the blood basin. The strange thing is that the entrance to the underground palace they entered is not the normal entrance of the family at all. The blood basin showed that the entrance to the family was still hidden underground, but the entrance cave activated by the prop appeared from nowhere. Then I watched AG and others jump into the entrance of the unknown underground palace one by one, and quickly disappeared. Just after they all entered, the entrance door of the underground cave quickly changed from an old appearance to a brand new appearance. On the walls on both sides of the entrance, the mottled traces of time and the worn surface of some stone bricks actually faded away silently and became brand new again. The hound-like statues at the doorways on both sides have also been given a new look. It suddenly changed from an unknown dilapidated entrance to the entrance to the underground palace currently being used by the Wellington family. Every time I see this, I feel goosebumps all over my body. The lazy female voice finally showed a hint of dignity. Where does this entrance come from? I don't know, the neutral voice replied. I only know that the head of the family activated something, I don't know what, and then told me the plan. They probably won't be able to come out anymore. Let's think about other things. One of the two high-ranking elders from the other two families has died here. This matter may be very troublesome. The old man said in a low voice, how much benefit do we need to pay to satisfy the other party? Half of the heart core has been extracted in advance. As long as the blood essence and blood are enough, we can still be resurrected. It's not a big problem. It just takes a certain amount of time to recover our strength. We may have to bleed heavily, replied a lazy voice. Tulan, it might be your turn to negotiate with them this time. It was us the first two times, the old voice suggested. I know, it's really annoying. There are words here again, Mana said softly, stroking the wall. What word? Nisra stood up from the ground a little irritably. Everyone who enters the underground palace will become the prey of the death stroke. This is an inescapable curse, Manas recited the writing on the wall in a low voice. Pretend to be a ghost, Nisra flicked the ashes on her fingers. Just now she squatted down to check a certain mark on the ground, but found nothing. Keep going, she said coldly, seeming to calm down quickly. It's best to find AG and Garen as soon as possible. The sudden appearance of this strange underground palace here has exceeded our expectations. The three of them continued to move forward along the passage. The fire seemed to be moving in the endless darkness. The passage in front became wider and wider, gradually forming a sloping slope going down. Soon the three of them heard the subtle sound of water coming from the bottom of the slope below. "It's a river," Thousand-Footed Snake whispered, holding a torch and walking over, shining it from a distance, and could see the sparkling waves below, and a rushing underground river at the bottom. The river was 4 to 5 meters wide, spanning in front of the three of them. If they wanted to continue their progress, they had to cross the creek. Looking to the left and right sides, there are blocked walls on both sides. There is a big hole at the bottom of the wall, through which the river flows in and out. A small river suddenly appeared in the passage. Nasira had a special energy-absorbing physique that could nullify all extraordinary powers. At this time, he took the initiative to walk out, quickly walked to the edge of the river below the slope, and gently scooped it up with his hands. A bucket of water. The water was a little black and even had a faint odor. Nasira threw it away after smelling it. "This water is poisonous, be careful." She stood up and looked at the rushing river in front of her. The entire creek runs in the middle of the channel, 7 or 8 meters long from left to right. Nasira stepped back slightly and jumped forward. His body suddenly flew forward lightly and landed on the opposite bank with a splash. The two people behind him also used their strength to jump over and landed firmly on the opposite bank. Unlike the passage here, the opposite bank is a rough rocky ground without any man-made facilities. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 705. Around the ground, where the walls meet the rock walls, there is some gray moss growing faintly. There seemed to be moisture in the air, forming a light white mist. Nasira looked around vigilantly, but didn't seem to find anything unusual. "Be careful. If this is really Unil Garden, there will definitely be trouble." "I'll do it." Manas, the Knight of the Magic Mist, walked out, his armor rustling. He squatted down, knelt on one knee, and pressed his arms on the ground. The fire of clarity. A circle of purple lines lit up on the forearms of his arms, and the purple lines burrowed into the ground like snakes. With a scoff, a ball of yellow flame spontaneously ignited on the ground, and the flame turned into a fire snake, crawling forward quickly like a living creature. "Follow it, it will lead us to the core of this place." Manas stood up and whispered. The other two didn't say much and followed closely behind. The three of them quickly accelerated behind the fire snake and soon submerged into the rough passage. As they advanced deeper and deeper, the faint white mist around them became thicker and thicker, wet and moist. Getting more and more angry. The fire snake of clarity leading the way also began to dim gradually, seeming to be somewhat suppressed. Manas took out several weird snake gall-like things and threw them in one after another, barely keeping the fire snake burning. "Call." "What's the sound?" Nasira suddenly stopped. "Did you hear that?" The three of them were already deep in the rough passage, surrounded mostly by cold, hard stone walls. "Sound? What sound?" Thousand-Legged Snake frowned and glanced around. "Call." Suddenly, a group of twists passed behind him, and the other two people screamed at the same time, and took action instantly. Bang bang. Two masses of black mist hit the stone wall behind the thousand-legged snake, knocking down many black stones. The thousand-legged snake itself also reacted, and a large amount of hair suddenly emerged from the skin of its body. These hairs were like tentacles of living creatures, piercing out in all directions like steel needles popping out under high pressure. Many of the hair tips hit the stone wall with a crisp tinkling sound. "Ring! Watch your head," Nethera's voice yelled. The thousand-legged snake hurriedly raised its head, just in time to see a mass of transparent distortion coming down on its head. Boom! Garen punched the side of the stone wall of the passage. A large number of stones were smashed into pieces and scattered, making a loud noise. A large pit several meters deep appeared on the stone wall, with countless dense cracks spreading around it. "Huh," He retracted his fist and looked at the stone wall. This should be an independent underground passage. There are no connecting passages around it. Give up, Hesaz said lightly. There is indeed some trouble, Garen nodded. It would be great if I could fly. In the last world, I can fly just like the last world. I can fly straight up, and I can't be trapped here. If I'm not wrong, it's useless even if you can fly here. If you can't find the trick or method to get out, I'm afraid you won't be able to break out of the ground if you go up, Hesaz whispered. There seems to be some kind of spatial distortion here. No matter which direction you break through, you will eventually be twisted in the downward direction and going down. Unless you penetrate the entire planet, you still don't want to leave here. Can you find a way? Garen continued walking forward. The surrounding passages have changed from the bright yellow neat passages to rough stone wall tunnels. I need time. It can't be so fast in a hurry. It would be nice if you moved on so I could peek a little more into the rules of space here. All right. Garen quickened his pace and continued walking deeper into the innermost part. Ah, thousand-legged snake shouted. A purple-red light curtain lit up around her body, and her eyes instantly burned with purple fire. She opened her mouth wide, and shot out a trembling and twisting arc-shaped purple light from her mouth, like a blade to face the people above. Transparent distortion. But a strange scene appeared. The purple sword light penetrated straight through the distortion, without any effect at all. Puff. The thousand-legged snake's expression remained stunned for a moment, and then it was directly covered by the twisted mass, and its whole person was wrapped in it, as if it was stuffed into a large ball of sticky glue. She struggled to breathe, but she couldn't get rid of the twisted slime. Next to them, Nethera and the other two tried to use various means to cut through the invisible distortion, but to no avail. You can only see that the thousand-legged snake is getting smaller and smaller inside the twist. The body actually began to melt like a candle. Her face began to rot, melting into balls of pale yellow mucus and flowing down. Her ears were the first to melt, as well as her breasts, nose, and other raised parts. The melted mucus slid down a short distance and quickly merged into the transparent twist. Damn it, Nizra frantically tried to tear apart the twisted slime with her hands, but to no avail. Her energy-absorbing system didn't work at all, and she could only watch the thousand-legged snake struggling and dancing inside. Sweat continued to flow down his forehead. Damn it! Where the hell is this place? Nizra felt a pain in her hands, and suddenly retracted her hands, seeing that a small part of her palms had been corroded and rotten away without knowing when. Let's go, Mana suddenly pulled her up from behind and ran back. After a few steps, she found that she was still on the same spot, then turned around and ran forward. Both of them were in a state of shock. The twisted and desperate face of the thousand-legged snake gradually disappeared behind them and was gradually submerged in the darkness. They continued to move forward with the fire of clarity in front of them, and soon left everything behind. The thousand-legged snake is a high-level one. Don't worry, she won't die so easily, Manas comforted. But both of them actually knew that thousand-legged snake was a subordinate of AG and not a member of the Witch Guild. There was a difference between closeness and distance, and it was impossible for them to pay a high price to try to rescue each other. The upper level not only represents strength, but also represents life and survivability. It is represented by the superiority of the vampire clan. High-ranking vampires can separate part of their core and save it, and the body can still maintain its peak state for the time being, but the endurance will not last long. In this way, once the main body is about to perform an extremely dangerous mission, and if it is sacrificed, the core left in advance can be used to absorb the blood essence and quickly condense into another new main body. Of course, rebirth like this will make him weak for a long time, at least a year or two, but it is better than dying in battle directly. Similarly, high-ranking witches also have similar methods. They can use a large number of secret methods to enhance and restore their bodies at any time. They can also use the lizard tail cutting method to give up a certain part of their body to face a certain death crisis on their behalf. But the most common thing is to use allies as substitutes to give yourself one more chance to survive. Their alliance is a companion with extraordinary power of their own. This alliance itself does not have very strong intelligence, but it is an incomprehensible illusory existence. Only wizards can use and summon them. Ah! Suddenly, a sharp scream came from behind. It's a thousand-legged snake. She seemed to have experienced an extremely painful experience, and the heart-rending screams came instantly, causing both Nisra and Manas to tremble and involuntarily speed up their pace. Let's go. Nethera almost broke into a jog. But before she could run far, her footsteps suddenly stopped and she stood in the passage, not daring to move forward. Manas behind her almost hit her in the back. What's wrong? Nisra took a step back slightly, staring warily at the darkness of the passage ahead. She didn't speak, just pointed forward. Manas looked forward and saw a bald man in black standing in front of the passage, blocking their way. The most conspicuous thing about this man is his shiny bald head, but the strange thing is that his bald head is densely covered with human eyes, large and small. These human eyes are black and white, and they are blinking and blinking. It looks very permeable. The man stood with his back to them. There were dozens of eyes on the back of his head. He stood motionless. It seems that it is not a living person at all, but just a sculpture. But both Manas could feel an inexplicable heart-beating feeling from him. Do it! Nisra rushed forward, kicked to the side, and her long legs made a terrifying whistling sound. She actually pulled out a ball of transparent air and shot it directly at the opponent. The air bomb was in the shape of a comet, drawing a straight line and hitting the bald vest hard. Bang! The air bombs dispersed and exploded, but the bald vest was not damaged at all. Call! At this moment, a huge force rushed out from behind Nisra and hit her vest. Bang! Nisra stumbled forward, and her feet seemed to be tripped by something. She lost her balance and fell forward. But immediately she felt like something was wrapped around her waist. Looking back from the corner of her eye, she seemed to see several huge black tentacles as thick as buckets behind her. The tentacles suddenly wrapped around her and became transparent and invisible in an instant, and then began to secrete a large amount of invisible transparent mucus. Laugh! She suddenly screamed and made a weird sound. Immediately, her left arm broke automatically. Then her whole body blurred, as if she had moved instantaneously. She disappeared directly from the place and appeared in the front passage more than 10 meters away. At this time, Manas seemed to have used the method of cutting off the lizard's tail, and suddenly ran into the fork in front of him who didn't know when. Split up, Nisra shouted and ran forward without looking back. The power of that tentacle is so huge, it is several times stronger than the upper-level vampires. Each tentacle is extremely sticky, and you can't break free if it sticks to it. At this time, she could already feel the burning pain in her waist. The mucus could not be rid of even by cutting off the tail. This shocked her, and at the same time, she involuntarily accelerated her pace. Along the way, she dropped small dark red disc-like objects. As soon as these small objects were dropped, they automatically made a crunching sound and disappeared into the ground below the passage like little octopuses. This is a powerful time bomb specially made by her using secret techniques, and it is attached with extremely powerful alliance power, which is simply called witchcraft power. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 706. Wizards form alliances on the edge of illusion and reality, and then use alliances as channels to leverage the magical power of the natural universe. They use dreams as a way to practice and exercise, and then acquire terrifying abilities that are extremely powerful in reality. And even in reality, when encountering an unavoidable crisis, Wizards can more or less use the power of alliances to enter the dream for a short time and then escape, achieving a death-avoiding effect similar to teleportation. This is what Nizra just said. The principle of escape method is the tail-cutting method of lizard. But the monster just now was able to make the mucus stick to Nizra's body, making it impossible to completely get rid of it even in the dream world. This is terrifying. It is equivalent to the fact that the mucus in the monster's tentacles itself has a certain degree of mental pollution toxicity. She quickly ran to the inner wall of a passage and sat down. Panting heavily, she quickly took out various things and small things from her pockets, and placed them all on the ground, forming a shape like an eye. "Swim," she whispered. The eye pattern suddenly started to move on its own, then disappeared as it burrowed into the ground. Bang! The passage shook violently, and Nasira was not surprised at all. She knew that the bomb she had planted earlier exploded. Those witchcraft bombs were much more powerful than ordinary bombs, but she did not expect to be able to stop the monster. Standing up, she was about to continue running forward when a thick tentacle popped out from behind Lenbuting and hit her back from the darkness. Bang! Puff! Nizra spat out a mouthful of blood, sped forward, and quickly disappeared around the corner. Berlin. What is that? Kabu's face was solemn, and sweat was faintly dripping from his temples. He stood in the center of the camp, looking warily at the crowd of men forming around him. Meads was right next to him, looking equally nervous. In less than 10 minutes just now, someone in the camp suddenly fainted and fell to the ground. This was nothing. What was terrifying was that while this person was in a coma, his whole body was rotting like smelly meat, and the surface of his skin was like broken flesh. There were hollow, dried wounds here and there, and the shriveled muscles inside could be seen through the wounds. Not even a trace of blood or moisture seeped out. 4 or 5 people who had fainted died silently. This made Kabu and others immediately alert. Immediately they discovered that there seemed to be something like a black thread constantly wandering inside the camp, and when it encountered any gaps, it would burrow into people's skin. Several people fired wildly with guns before breaking it into several sections. "Take it back to the laboratory to study the ingredients," Kabu ordered. After finding that no abnormalities occurred again, he took out a handkerchief to wipe off the sweat. "What about the secrets of the fighting club?" Medes also slowly relaxed and asked in a low voice. "Preparatory plans continue." Ah! Suddenly, a scream came from the direction of the patrol outside the forest. "Who?" Bang bang bang. There was a burst of gunfire, accompanied by several grenade explosions. In the woods at night, several black shadows were entangled with members of the elite Bailey group guarding the forest. "It's Nighthawk's people. Evacuate," a patrol leader shouted. Kabu was immediately surrounded by a large group of people. His eyelids jumped wildly and he looked outside carefully, but he could only see his patrol members falling to the ground one by one. Those black shadows rushed towards the side very quickly. The black figure at the front was illuminated by the lights of the camp, and his figure was revealed. It was an ordinary man with a young face. He was just dressed in black, mixed with a decisive and ruthless temperament. "How dare you peek at the transportation team of our fighting club, Bailey Group? How brave you are!" The man wore black metal gloves on his hands, with sharp metal thorns on his fists, which looked extremely ferocious, and a little bit of blood was slowly left on them. "Retreat," Kabu ordered decisively. He recognized this man. Sidon, one of the first elite members of the fighting club, once forcibly killed several people in the face of firearms, and then disappeared. Now it seems that he has become more powerful and cruel. Kabu lowered his body, quietly moved out of the crowd under the cover of Medes, and got into a camouflaged car. After closing the door and window, he breathed a sigh of relief. What a strong alertness! He wiped his sweat, started the car quickly and silently, and accelerated towards the distance to escape. As for the rest of the people, as long as they were broken into pieces, the other party would not be able to catch up with a few people. Moreover, a large force will follow soon. Now that the fighting club is short of manpower, Sidon alone can't make much difference. But the more closely it is protected, the more important it is. Kabu's eyes flickered. It just so happens that the group of people who have just been trained can be brought in to test the effect. Metis also threw the tissue she used to wipe her sweat into the trash can and loosened her tie. I'll notify them right away. If the intelligence from primary color is accurate, then there is indeed only Sidon here, and the rest have been sent out to handle other things. Now is our best chance to seize that thing, Kabu whispered. You can inform Ewan Scranlin and let's do it together. When the time comes, each of us will get half of it. He knew clearly in his heart that just a little secret martial arts skills could improve his strength so much. If he really got secret records such as the original secret martial arts, the improvement would be simply terrifying. Assemble all the manpower that can be mobilized immediately. I don't believe that we can't snatch it. He gritted his teeth, a trace of fierceness flashed in his eyes. Then I will bring them back, Metis asked tentatively. Last time they ambushed Nighthawk, the mercenary group under their group suffered heavy losses. Afterwards, they were constantly hunted and retaliated by Nighthawk and the fighting club. Now when mobilized back, it might lead to the annihilation of the entire army. Tune. As long as I can get something, I'm offering a reward of 20 million euros. I don't believe it, Kabu gritted his teeth. It's too late in a short time. It doesn't matter, they won't be able to come back in a short time. As long as things are on the road, we can intercept them at any time. Neither of them noticed that in the forest beside where their car left, a black figure stood silently. The figure had blood-red eyes and a round black hat, watching quietly as the car left completely. What's wrong? Did you find anything new? A female voice sounded from behind the figure. It's very interesting to find that the convoy here seems to be transporting the more important things of the fighting club. It was discovered by this group of humans and they intend to intercept it, the black figure said in pure Berlin German. This human organization is very mysterious, the female voice whispered. Now their leader Garin is entangled with Wellington. The news just came that this person is very powerful. Let us retreat immediately after encountering him. Oh, the black figure suddenly became interested. Did I hear you correctly? We are a high-ranking vampire. Are you asking us all to retreat? Vidi and Yeldu almost died, the female voice said in a low voice. The black figure seemed to be stunned, or didn't know how to react at all. Are you kidding? He asked back. Uriduo is more powerful than me, will he almost die? This is how the news spread. I don't know the details. Isn't it just a statement that the leader asked us to come over to investigate? The woman said solemnly. What a surprise, the black figure shook his head slightly. That being said, I'm more interested in what that convoy is transporting. Let's go take a look together. The black shadow sneered, slowly began to fade in place, and slowly disappeared. Anyone who enters the garden will inevitably die. AG gently touched the writing on the wall. It was written in ancient German and had been carved on the wall for who knows how many years. He continued to touch down and looked through the firelight. No one can escape the curse of the death stroke. Repent, sinner, he read the words one by one, without moving his face at all. He seemed to be thinking about something. Unil's garden, he had studied this secret place. It was a closed space with an infinite loop. If you couldn't find a way, you would never get out. Ah! Suddenly there was a scream from the passage ahead. It seems to be from a thousand-legged snake. AG's face tightened, he put down his hand, and his body jumped forward more than 10 meters as if floating. In this way, he quickly moved forward more than 10 meters at a time, and he soon approached the source of the sound. According to the distance of the sound, this is indeed the starting point of the sound. Stopping, AG looked at the empty black passage in front of him. There were two forked roads going left and right in front of him. On the stone wall of the forked road directly above, there was carved a humanoid relief with 3 heads, 6 arms and 3 eyes. The relief resembled a man and a woman. The one in the center was the head stared down with an angry look, and its 6 hands held 6 items, a water bottle, a ring, a tomahawk, a ribbon, a dagger, and a long stick. Behind him, without even realizing it, a transparent and invisible distortion rose silently from the ground. The distortion slowly expanded and opened, like a huge mouth, and slowly approached him. AG was still looking up at the relief, as if he remembered something important. "We're back to square one again." Garen frowned and looked at the big hole he had made in the wall. "This is the infinite loop space without the technical means of higher dimensions. You will never be able to escape from here," Hessas explained. "Unfortunately, there is no content in these methods in my memory. There are only a few traces, obviously because the memory is incomplete." "A higher dimension?" "Similar to a Klein bottle." Garen stood still. "Klein bottle, what is that?" Garen suddenly remembered that this was a physical concept on Earth. "Nothing." There were dark passages with no end in sight in front and behind, and on the left and right were large holes in the wall that he had tried to drill, and the ground was filled with small piles of rocks and debris. "Maybe I can find someone else who can think of a way." Garen felt that he didn't have the means to do this. "Then go ahead and try to smash the passages left and right and see where you can open up other passages," Hessas suggested. "If there is no other way, trying to destroy this place might be able to turn things around. It can only be this way." Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 707. Continuing to move forward, a black rapid river gradually appeared in front of them. There was something faintly rising and falling in the river water, which was blurry and could not be seen clearly. Garen walked to the river. "This has never been seen before. It seems to have some effect." Garen carefully checked by the river. In addition to his footprints, there were also the footprints of several other people on the ground. It was obvious that he was not the only one who had been here. He jumped up slightly and landed on the opposite bank of the river. "Looking back at the passage behind me, the strange thing is that the passage where I was standing just now is just a rolling darkness, and I can't see anything. This side of the river is a rough stone wall channel, which is completely different from the neat stones on the other side." Garen lowered his head and looked at the ground again. Sure enough, 2 lines of clear footprints spread continuously towards the depths of the rough passage. He silently moved forward along the footprints, always paying attention to any situation around him. Nasiro looked pale. After hurriedly taking some healing medicine, he staggered forward for more than 10 minutes. Only then did he get rid of the huge tentacles that were constantly chasing behind him and entered a spacious and bright black sphere. Hall. The stone walls on all sides of the stone hall are black and shaped like an egg. The stone walls are curved and extremely smooth. A kind of light green moss grows faintly on the wall surrounding the entire stone hall, giving it a pale green shimmer that illuminates the entire hall. Nisra stood in front of an entrance on the wall of the stone hall, lowered her head and looked down. Through the pale green light, she could see the densely packed white bones at the bottom of the stone hall. She didn't know how high they were piled. The bones were like an ocean. Occasionally it will tremble and move. Suddenly, Nisra's expression changed, and she suddenly stood close to the wall. She pressed her body as close to the wall as possible, not daring to move at all. Whoosh! A black shadow passed in front of her and entered the egg-shaped stone hall at high speed. It was a tentacle as thick as a bucket. After the top of the tentacle penetrated into the egg-shaped stone hall, it suddenly opened like a bud, revealing the mouthparts densely packed with sharp teeth, and then spit forward with a grunt. Puff! Immediately, a corpse that had rotted beyond the human shape was spit out and slid into the egg-shaped stone hall. It took a long time to hear the impact of the body falling onto the sea of bones. The tentacle spit out some more debris one after another, and then quickly retracted with a whooshing sound, disappearing into the darkness behind it. Nisara's eyes lit up at this sight. This creature can actually move forward and backward freely here. There was a glimmer of hope in her heart. She waited until the tentacles were completely retracted, then continued back to the edge of the cave entrance and looked into the stone hall. I saw that on the stone wall in the stone hall, the openings of the stone wall were as densely packed as a honeycomb. From time to time, a tentacle would emerge from each opening and open its mouth to spit out things. It was like vomiting. A large number of debris and corpses were vomited into this egg shaped in the stone hall. These tentacles were like sprinkler pipes and sewage pipes. Nasira looked from a distance and actually saw Mana's figure at the entrance of a cave opposite. Most of Mana's armor was melted. He was lying on the edge of the cave entrance, looking extremely weak, and his right arm and leg were missing. Boom! Suddenly, Nisra heard a huge roar coming from behind. There seems to be some huge force colliding horribly. Then a black shadow shot out from a passage hole on her right. It was a naked man with white hair. His whole body was covered with blood marks and scars. He was spitting out blood when he was ejected from the passage. He fell straight and silently, and was directly smashed into the sea of bones without making any sound. Nisra's pupils shrank, and then she saw three suspicious-looking masked men rushing out of the passage. Hook ropes shot out from their bodies and hung on the stone wall. They nimbly avoided the tentacles that sprang out from behind, and then swung down to the bottom like a swing. After a few back and forth, the three of them quickly reached the bottom of the stone hall, put away the hooks, and quickly circled along the sea of bones, and unexpectedly entered an inconspicuous small entrance at the bottom. Only then did Nasira discover that there was a small door at the bottom. It was a white stone door that seemed to be built artificially. The three people entered the door one after another and quickly disappeared into the door. She raised her head and looked across and saw Manas nodding towards her weakly, and both of them had the intention of following those people. Follow them. Suddenly Ag's voice came from behind Nasira. You're finally here. Nisra turned around and saw Ag walking slowly and step by step with a cane. He looked extremely calm, but there was a faint black stain on the hem of his clothes. He didn't know where it came from. Are you sure? We don't even know who those three people are. Nisra frowned. You're injured. Ag didn't answer her. He threw a small glass bottle of green ointment over and walked directly towards the stone hall outside the cave entrance with a cane. When he reached the edge of the cave entrance, he paused with his crutches, and a cloud of black air suddenly appeared under his feet. The black air transformed into a man with only the upper body, his arms spread wide, and he flew down with Ag on his shoulders. Nasira gritted his teeth, then jumped over and landed on the man, side by side with Ag. Ag glanced at her, with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Let's go down first and follow those three people. If I guess correctly, they should be hunters who entered here from another place and want to seize that thing. Hunter? Yes, Anil Garden has three terrifying entities, the scavenger, the gatekeeper, and the gardener. But since it is a garden, there are naturally extremely precious and rare flowers and plants in it. If I guessed correctly, there must be what I need. Growing extinct plants. Ag seemed to be in a very good mood. Which one is helpful to you? Nisra stood on the black man's arm and looked down at the sea of bones below. It was even more shocking to see it up close. If you get it. Ag licked his lips. On the other side, Manas also slid down the stone wall, hitting the ground with a loud bang and splashing large amounts of white bone powder. The three of them landed at the small door at the bottom and met together. Except for Ag, who was still normal, the other two were in a bit of a mess. Standing in front of the small white stone door. Do you want to wait for galleons? Nisra asked. Wait 10 minutes, if they don't come we'll go in first. Ag decided decisively. Siddhan squatted in the middle of the camp, gently wiped the grass on the ground, and smelled it. There are at least 30 people staying here for several hours, he whispered, and the moonlight fell on his face at night, giving it a pale luster. Surrounded by more than 10 meters of elite subordinates from Nighthawk and Fighting Club. With the integration and gathering of the major forces in the Holy Fist Palace, a new huge force began to form a whole. A subordinate stood up and whispered. Our main force has gone to the estate in Wellington. I think we should focus on protecting the goods now. You're right, Sidon is a person who likes to listen to other people's opinions. He stood up and glanced around. There are many people peeking into the secrets of our fighting club. Now that the president is not here, it is them. It's a great time to take action. We need to be highly vigilant. He waved his hand. Let's go back to the convoy. A group of people quickly evacuated the forest camp and disappeared into the night. The motorcade slowly moved forward on the road in the dark night, like a long yellow snake. It was already close to the transport airport. The street lights on the road occasionally had broken lights that did not light up, but the lights of the motorcade would also appear. Be as bright as day. On both sides are wilderness, with the occasional tall square billboard erected, and the rest are rolling mountains and sparse woods. The whining engine sound was continuous, and from time to time, guards could be seen on the convoy. Damn, it's really weird tonight. Both Hunter and Pattaya were knocked unconscious for no reason. They didn't even see anyone. I thought I had lost something, but didn't I think something was wrong? That's weird. In a truck at the end, a big man smoking a Nighthawk complained impatiently. When dealing with these weird opponents all day long, people will become nervous. The woman driving next to her had dark skin and a black butterfly tattooed on her bare right arm. He answered casually with a cigarette in his mouth. If you want to gain a lot, you must be mentally prepared to pay a lot. The woman looked like she was only in her 20s, but she spoke in an old-fashioned way. That's right. Didn't we choose to join Nighthawk just to learn the legendary secret martial arts? When we were first selected, I didn't know how many people wanted to join. We have good benefits, good treatment, and it's a big organization. You can also learn the most powerful secret martial arts. No matter how desperate you are, the conditions here are much better. The big man took off the cigarette butt from his mouth and blew out a smoke ring. In fact, both of them understand that the Nighthawk Fighting Club does not easily go out for big tasks, but once there is a big task, it is a very troublesome type. But after raising them for so long, isn't it just to contribute at this time? Boom. Suddenly, the vehicle in front lit up with a red fire, and a huge concussive shock wave came fiercely. Trucks braked quickly and stopped one after another. The people in the car got out of the car one after another and took out their firearms. Some walked around the fire to patrol the past, and some were on guard on both sides and put on night vision goggles. Groups of masked men in black took advantage of the darkness to attack from all directions. As soon as the two sides came into contact, dense gunfire broke out. Sidon jumped out of the car with a cold look in his eyes. Apart from him, there were only ordinary Nighthawk members in the entire convoy who had learned some secret martial arts skills. He put on the special glasses he was equipped with, and his eyes immediately showed the dense green and red dots on the side of the convoy. The green dots were his own people, and the red dots were the hostile parties attacking. The green dots are constantly decreasing, and although the red dots are also decreasing, the number is far more than the green dots. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 708. The situation is not good. Sidon leaned his body under the car door. The thick door of the special vehicle was enough to block ordinary stray bullets. In this case, even he wouldn't dare to rush in and out. He would indeed be able to sense when someone was targeting him, but if a missile was fired, there would be no sense at all. I don't even know how I died. Without anyone noticing, two black shadows flashed vaguely like lightning and quickly rushed into the back compartment of a truck in the middle. In the darkness, two slender figures slowly emerged from the carriage. Right here. It can't be wrong. I want to see what the secret protected by the fighting club is. It is worthy of these people's pursuit, a male voice said with a relaxed and calm voice, reaching out to touch the box that had a hole punched earlier. The moment he touched the box, boom! An indescribable aura of terror erupted from the box. No. It was an eruption, and the breath erupted like magma, as if it was alive, and it couldn't wait to squeeze out of the box. Take off the mask. I will grant you unimaginable power and wealth, a seductive voice echoed in the man's mind. Uncover it. Uncover it. Uncover it, echoes echoed in the man's mind. Meeting. The man's ears seemed to hear the voice of a woman calling him, and the voice seemed to come from an extremely distant place. His whole body was trembling, and his fingertips had touched a thin and rough mask, which seemed to have densely packed holes. That seductive voice kept echoing in his heart, as if it was carrying an extremely strong sense of pleasure. Meeting. What's wrong with you? The woman's voice sounded urgently in his ears. The man's whole body seemed to be pulled back by a strong force, and his whole body was suddenly out of the box's contact range. He woke up suddenly. I was almost controlled. What the hell is this? He stepped back a few steps with horrified eyes, staring at the boxes in the carriage. In the darkness, a pair of huge blood-red eyes slowly appeared in the carriage. The eyes were extremely psychedelic and seductive. They were not eyes that humans could have at all, but slightly golden vertical pupils. Come on, cute little guy, take off your mask, and I will give you the supreme power. A voice actually penetrated the space and echoed directly in the minds of the two vampires. Not only the men, but also the female vampires turned pale at this time, and their whole bodies were trembling, trying to escape from this terrifying controlling force. But for some reason, the essence and blood in their bodies couldn't help but tremble and boil, as if they were completely out of their control. Walk. A circle of blood streaks suddenly erupted from the woman's side, sweeping up the two of them and flying backwards. They crashed through half of the car door and fell into the darkness on the side of the road. They disappeared in a few clicks. No. Come back. Come back. The ferocious roar could only be heard by the two vampires. They could vaguely feel the huge force of temptation calling them from behind, as if it was their destined adventure and turning point. Don't look back. Damn it. What the hell is that? The male vampire's eyes and nostrils were bleeding. He did not dare to look back at all. He and the female vampire ran wildly towards the outside, their bodies transformed into after-images. In a distant underground palace. Garen narrowed his eyes sharply. Someone touched the mask. It doesn't matter, that thing is getting more and more troublesome now. Even with mask suppression, if someone approaches rashly, they will be contaminated by the void curse of the void creatures you hunted. Once cursed, a certain number of people must die before it will stop. So if you want to take away the mask, you are asking for trouble. Hessas disagreed. Garen nodded silently and continued to move forward. There was an inexplicable smell flowing in front of him, and there was a faint smell of blood in the air in the rough passage. It seems that we need to speed up the progress and leave here quickly. We must find all the masks as soon as possible. The matter here must be resolved as soon as possible, Garen said lightly. That's right. Garen quickened his pace. His legs seemed not to move very fast, but each step would cover a terrifying distance of more than 10 meters. The speed was as fast as a high-speed sports car. He moved forward like lightning in the passage without any sign of hitting the stone wall. In a vast hall full of bloody magma cracks. In an inconspicuous stone wall entrance, AG slowly walked in step by step with a cane, scanning the entire magma hall with some fanatical eyes. When he saw a huge circular garden in the middle of the hall, the luster in his eyes suddenly seemed to shine, and his throat trembled violently. Nasira and Mana slowly walked out from behind him. The two looked much better, and their injuries seemed to have been temporarily stabilized by some means. Where were those people just now? Nizra asked in a low voice. Right here, by the garden over there, AG said in a low voice. They should also be trapped here. They can't get out, but if they can effectively avoid danger, they can survive by relying on the food in the garden. It looks like that's how they survived. Following AG's gaze, Manas raised one hand in the air, and a little red light spread out, turning into a triangular mirror, which revealed the situation of the three people beside the garden in the distance. The three people had their faces covered and were dressed in tattered black clothes. The white hair could be vaguely seen. They were obviously very old. But at this time, his eyes were closed tightly, muttering something, as if he was praying for something, facing the garden. The garden was just like an ordinary garden, with red and blue flowers and green leaves and branches. But the only strange thing was that the garden was too big. An ordinary blue flower is several meters in diameter, and the larger one is even 7 or 8 meters in diameter, enough for more than 10 people to stand on it. Moreover, the lush greenery of the entire garden is incompatible with the dense bloody magma cracks on the surrounding ground. It seems that it is not affected by the terrifying high temperature and poisonous smoke at all. Boom! Suddenly AG jumped forward, avoiding a huge black tentacle as thick as a bucket behind him. The tentacles are like the tentacles of an octopus, and are full of densely packed suckers like small mouths. The suckers are constantly sucking, giving people a terrifying and infiltrating feeling. The tentacles were swept away, and they hit Manas hard on the side, who was unable to dodge. There was a bang, and Manas could only take out a short knife in front of him in a hurry, but the blade broke and the tentacles were not damaged at all, and it hit him hard with a terrifying force. The huge force directly led him to hit the stone wall on the side, forming a deep depression. Manas's strongest point is its strength and defense, but at this moment, it is completely useless in front of the tentacles, and it is easily smashed away like a toy. A sharp light flashed in AG's eyes. Just now, he was almost attacked from behind by this thing and injured his body. At this time, the tentacle actually came after him again. He crouched. Slow. A twisted transparent force instantly fell on the tentacles, directly reducing his speed by a level, making it so that Nasira could catch up. Burn! AG yelled again. In an instant, black blood bubbles appeared on the surface of the tentacles, as if the body was being burned by high temperature. AG raised his cane again. Corrosion, there were faint veins on his face, obviously he had used all his strength. A circle of black light suddenly lit up on the top of the crutch, and then dissipated. The tentacles on the other side immediately began to rot and melt following the sound, and black mucus dripped down drop by drop like a candle. The tentacle immediately let go of Manas and tried to retract it, but to no avail. Nasira took the opportunity and slashed him. With a hiss, it was cut into 2 sections. The first half melted into a black solution and flowed. It enters the magma gap on the ground and is evaporated into black smoke that diffuses and disappears. Nizla and the two finally breathed a sigh of relief. AG held his cane with an expressionless face and whispered, "Go to the garden and help me look for a flower with spiky petals, 1 layer of red and 1 layer of blue. If you find it, be sure to notify me immediately." Before he finished speaking, 2 terrifying black shadows suddenly burst out from the hole in the back. Their speed exceeded the line of sight, and they instantly appeared behind AG. Through the red light of the lava, Nizra and the 2 could see clearly that they were 2 darker and terrifying tentacles. The tentacles wrapped around AG like a ferocious snake and tightened tightly. Click. The sound of bones breaking suddenly came from AG's body, and he opened his mouth and screamed. The top of the crutch lit up with black light again, and a huge concussive force suddenly spread out, causing the 2 tentacles to loosen. He took the opportunity to escape and get out, with blood flowing from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. "Let's go," he shouted, and a black light appeared all over his body, sucking Nizra and Manas into it, and then turned into an arrow of light that shrank and shot towards the garden. As the black light arrows formed by the three of them were flying, another tentacle caught up with them and hit them hard on the tail. The light arrow crashed to the ground and transformed into AG and Nesramanos again at the edge of the circular garden. As soon as they stood firm, AG suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood. Awesome! If my alliance hadn't had the ability to turn into light, we would have been in trouble this time. His old face wrinkled more and more. Be careful, the garden is not entirely safe. I have studied this place. There should be 3 terrifying entities in the Unil garden: the scavenger, the gatekeeper, and the last gardener. What we encounter should be the scavenger, but as long as we don't, if you go deeper, you shouldn't encounter the next 2 monsters. If my judgment is accurate, this should be an opportunity to get out. Opportunity. Nisra's eyes twitched as she watched AG vomit blood one by one, fearing that he would vomit to death accidentally. Are you okay? It's not dead yet, AG nodded. It's too late to wait for galleons. Let's start right away and find that kind of flower quickly. That's the key to getting out of here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 709. There seems to be their scent here, Garen sniffed, seeming to smell the perfume on Nisra's body. He squatted down in the passage and touched the rough rocky ground. There seemed to be many potholes on the ground, as if many uneven places had been struck by a hammer. There was also some debris that had fallen from the walls. Call. Suddenly, a thick black tentacle shot straight out from the passage directly in front and wrapped fiercely towards Garen's waist. Huh! Garen's eyes opened, and his right arm suddenly slashed down, like a steel knife, to meet the tentacle. Bang! The tentacle was slashed by a palm knife, and countless sharp cuts instantly appeared on the surface of the skin. With a crash, it automatically broke into countless small pieces before it came into contact with Garen's body, flew past Garen's side, and landed on it. On the ground behind him. The remaining tentacles twitched and quickly retracted, disappearing into the darkness quickly. A strong sour smell suddenly filled the air. Garen frowned and covered his nose, then slapped his hand with one hand, causing a whirlwind to blow away the smell. The black tentacles on the ground were still twitching slightly, and some were crawling slowly on their own. Garen knelt down, picked up a piece of meat and squeezed it. It's very corrosive with acidity. It should be a legendary dimensional creature that can move freely here. Our hope of going out should be pinned on it, Hessaz whispered. Really? Garen nodded, looked at the direction in which the tentacles left in front, accelerated his pace, and directly caught up with him. Boom boom boom. The 3 tentacles were intertwined and waving, hitting the 3 AGS at the edge of the garden again and again. The other 3 masked men hid in a small corner at some point, their bodies covered with a sour liquid that was densely packed with tentacles. AG Nisra's body was stained with blood, and there were scars on the sides of his clothes. Manas was barely pulled by Nisra to avoid being hit by the tentacles again and again. Magma splashed, and stones on the wall fell in waves. Soon another tentacle rushed out from the entrance of the passage and joined the attacking team. Burning, AG shouted. A tentacle in front of him was suddenly filled with blood bubbles, but it quickly recovered. A tentacle from the side flew over sideways. Bang! He directly smashed the AG from the air like a baseball, hit the wall with a bang, and fell into a big pit. AG, Nasira shouted, with an anxious look on his face. She turned over her hands and took out a small purple fruit, which was round and looked like a peach with a sharp tip. After touching the purple fruit, Nisra showed a look of pain on his face, but then looked at AG on the wall. He had been rolled up by a tentacle and was being tightened vigorously. A large amount of blood was squeezed out of his mouth and nose. She finally gritted her teeth. Go, she slammed the small fruit in the direction of AG. The fruit exploded in mid-air and turned into a cloud of purple smoke. The smoke quickly condensed into a vague human shape with an aura like AG. There was a flash of purple light, and AG, entangled in the tentacles, appeared directly in the purple smoke human form. He flew up and landed next to Nizra with his crutch. He quickly took out a bunch of medicine-like things in his hand and stuffed them into his mouth. Walk. Wrapped in black light, the three disappeared again and turned into a black light arrow, which flew towards the interior of the garden with a sneer. Several tentacles chased after it, but when they were about to cross the garden, they suddenly shrank and dried up, as if something strange was absorbing its moisture. The tentacles made a hissing sound and were instantly retracted as if they were electrocuted. With a few puffs, the three AG fell into the huge garden, rolling to the ground on the black and yellow mud. They were all panting like cows and dripping with sweat. Manas directly took off his helmet, revealing his blue-black bald head. He was a young and calm bald black man. His blue eyes were actually just a side effect of the helmet. "Are you okay?" AG asked in a low voice. Not even wiping the blood that flowed from his body, he looked defeated and looked many years older. Nizra stood up. She was in the least serious condition, but it seemed that she was very depressed because of the purple fruit she had just used. "I'm okay, but Mana's leg is broken," she said with a wry smile. "Where is this place? Didn't we enter the garden?" When she said this, the two AGs realized and glanced left and right. They were actually in a lush forest, surrounded by towering black and green trees, including pine trees, broadleaf forests, red maples, and many more. Rare trees of unknown species. Thick tree roots arched up from the ground and passed through them. Some roots were even wrapped around the trunks of other large trees, and some were intertwined, forming strange shapes. Nizra looked up at the sky. The crescent moon in the night sky was like a sickle, emitting a bright halo. Buzz. Suddenly, the ground seemed to shake slightly. "Wow!" In front of the three of them, a masked man in black ran past with frightened eyes, his body carrying the grass and plants making a striking sound. "Stop," Nasira yelled. She urgently needed to find someone to ask her what exactly this place was. A purple vine shot out from her hand and wrapped around the masked man, dragging him back immediately. The man was pulled back and tied up by the vines, but he was still struggling. Nizra pulled him closer for a look. This man seemed unable to speak. The mask on his face was not worn, but grew on it, and it simply grew together with the flesh on his face. This man seemed to be born without a mouth, nose, and only a pair of black eyes. He was struggling with his teeth and claws, but he couldn't speak, he could only look at him with horror. From the eyes down, the entire face is completely black, looking like a rough linen-like mask. This guy, Nasira was also a little surprised, but she had lived for so many years and had never seen anything weird before, so she quickly calmed down. "Do you understand me?" she asked loudly. "Woo woo woo." The man just made a whining sound from nowhere, and his eyes were filled with fear. "It can't understand," the AG next to him whispered, coming over and touching the man's head. "This person, like the three people just now, is an aborigine here. They don't know our language or intelligence." He pondered for a moment, seeming to detect the person's head with his palms. "My intelligence is not very good, it is only equivalent to that of a child of a few years old." Buzz. The ground was shaking more and more, and it was shaking faintly. The land actually cracked and bulged, with dry cracks appearing, as if something was arching up from the ground. "Ah!" A man's voice, as low as chanting, sounded loudly, as if from the deepest part of the ground. "Back off!" AG suddenly flashed his eyes and was the first to jump to the side. The other two were slightly slower, but also jumped towards the other side. With a pop, the soil on the ground splashed loudly, and a huge dark red arm 7 or 8 meters thick rushed out from the ground. "That's a human arm." Boom. There was another muffled sound, and another arm rushed out of the ground not far away. The two palms were dark red and even had a wood-like texture, and they gripped the dirt at the edge. Ah! There was another low moan and cry, which seemed to be the man's long sigh of pain and helplessness, but also seemed to be an unconscious cry. The sound shook the entire forest. The countless pieces of soil between the two huge palms rose again, as if something even bigger was rushing out of the ground. "Let's go," AG yelled, and the crutch once again lit up a circle of black light, but the black light was trembling, seemed extremely unstable, and could never spread. AG's complexion changed slightly, and he bit the index finger of his other hand in his mouth, drawing blood, and moved it toward the top of the crutch. His index finger suddenly withered, turned black, became thinner, and then bent down limply. With a sneer, the black light finally dispersed, wrapping him into a light arrow that couldn't even be transformed, and flew directly towards the distance. Nasira also pulled Manas back quickly and moved away from here in another direction. Less than a few minutes after they left, the forest floor here finally broke through. 3 huge human heads with a diameter of 7 to 8 meters arched out from the ground. The 3 human faces, one happy, one angry, one crying, were placed close together in a triangular formation, which looked extremely weird. As the shaking on the ground became more intense, the 3 heads continued to rise, and a huge body of 17 or 18 meters wide protruded from below. The body became taller and longer, and it rose up into the sky with the 3 heads on its head, gradually revealing the entire body. What protruded out of the ground was a huge monster over 30 meters tall. 3 heads and 6 arms, the body seems to be made of dark red wood, with wooden texture, and the surface is carved into a set of mighty and gorgeous ribbons and armor. It looks like an ancient warrior wearing a long ribbon. Each of the 6 arms has each hand holds different weapons, a water bottle dagger, a battle axe, a long stick, and a ribbon. There were 3 faces, one crying, one happy and one angry, with hair standing up like flames on their heads, and unconscious shouts coming from their mouths. As soon as this huge monster broke out of the ground, one of its heads with an angry expression immediately looked at the 3 AGS on the ground. This monster's body shape has a very strange oriental plumpness. It seems that the gender cannot be distinguished, and there is a little cinnabar red on the face and between the eyebrows. An arm holding a ring crashed down, accompanied by an extremely heavy and violent roar of wind. The moonlight was suddenly blocked, shrouding the area in incomparable shadow. The strange thing is that the movement of the arms is obviously very slow, but the target AG can't move his legs at all, and his body is stiff. He can only watch the huge arm ring from above smashing down, and the black shadow can only hit him completely submerged. Just when the ring was still a few meters away and hit AG's head, he finally opened his mouth suddenly. Mula. A huge and strange sound erupted from AG's mouth. The sound quickly twisted from an invisible and transparent form, turned into a ball of white smoke, and rushed upward like a rocket. From a distance, it looks like a stream of white air is ejected from AG's mouth, pointing straight towards the ring above his head. Bang! The ring with a diameter of more than 10 meters was like a huge rock, slamming into the white air. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 710. At this moment, AG's whole body exploded with blood-colored cracks. His whole body trembled violently as if struck by thunder. In an instant, the white air was quickly recovered and drilled back into his mouth, and then a huge force carried him towards the distance. Fly away. On the other side, the other 2 arms grabbed the ribbon and the dagger and threw them at Nisra and Manas respectively. The 2 of them were equally miserable, covered in blood, and they didn't know how to dodge the attack. Especially Manas, the flesh and blood all over his body seemed to have shriveled up, and it looked like he had used some forbidden technique. The armor on his body had been smashed to pieces at this time, and he didn't know where it flew. The huge 3-headed and 6-armed monster was like a huge hill, rumbling with huge feet and chasing AG. Whoosh whoosh. With 3 consecutive sounds of breaking through the air, 3 black tentacles as thick as buckets flew out from the passage, smashing into the galleons in the passage with huge and terrifying power. Garen's eyes were slightly closed, seemingly open and then closed. He took a slow step, and his body seemed to be a phantom for an instant, and he strangely avoided the huge collision of the 3 tentacles. The fingers of both hands are like wheels, and they are lightly pressed on the tentacles. Bang bang bang. The 3 tentacles automatically exploded without any resistance, breaking into countless pieces of flesh and splashing all over the passage. The remaining tentacles broke and retracted quickly. Garen quickened his pace and chased forward. The passage turned left and right. The broken part of the tentacle was always within Garen's sight, and there was no way to escape his pursuit. Garen's speed has increased to a terrifying level. Every few seconds, he will step hard on the wall and ground, and rush forward with a bang. When he encounters a place with too many turns, he can turn around and make weird turns. Soon a green light in front quickly approached, getting brighter and bigger. Call. There was a roar of wind around him, and Garen followed the tentacles and rushed into a huge egg-shaped cave. With the help of inertia, he rushed directly out of the entrance, hung in mid-air, drew a parabola and fell hard. The walls of the entire cave are covered with dense green fluorescent moss, and these countless moss become the only source of light in the cave. In addition, there are countless entrance openings of different sizes on the cave wall. Just as Garen fell, there was a muffled sound from these holes, and black tentacles of different thicknesses rushed out at the same time, all of them raining towards Garen. There are hundreds of densely packed tentacles. The secret of Water Bird Fist, Garen crossed his arms in front of his chest to protect him. Double sword. With 2 crisp sounds, 2 invisible air wave blades suddenly flew out from Garen's side, like 2 crossed X-shaped white air knives, spreading in all directions. He moved slightly, his body suddenly stopped and suspended in mid-air, and his arms moved up and down to draw a complete circle. At the same time, the X-shaped white air knife also rolled. 2 air knives more than 10 meters long rolled and rotated, forming a huge white ring, cutting through all the hundreds of tentacles coming from around him. The sound of snapping was endless, and countless tentacles twitched painfully. The severed pieces of flesh fell down piece by piece, like a heavy rain of unusually black blood and pieces of flesh, hitting the pile of white bones below. This scene only lasted for less than a few seconds before Garen slowly fell down, his toes resting on a cluster of bones, and he stood lightly on the tip of an arched skeleton. The tip of the bone spur, which was sharper than the tip of a needle, was unable to penetrate Garen's soul at all. Your secret martial arts is getting more and more powerful, Hessa sighed with emotion. Continuously fighting against Nadia and long-term life and death training have made you closer and closer to the secret martial arts style of our era. Isn't this good? Garen asked, scanning the numerous broken tentacles that were twitching and retracting in the surrounding sky. The boxing techniques of our time were streamlined, efficient, without any unnecessary bells and whistles, and every move was created for fighting. Each boxing technique has unique characteristics, and the secret of each boxing technique is a terrifying extreme. Hessa's sighed, your current style is very close to ours. This is the real way to eliminate the bad and retain the good. Yes, my will was created for the purpose of fighting. Garen tipped his toes, fell lightly from the bone spikes, and jumped towards a small white stone door on the side. That was the route he smelled that AG and his group left. In his current state, with his powerful and frightening physical quality, even if he doesn't activate the secret method of the 7-star life-pointing secret point, he doesn't need to worry about the countless tentacles here. The average attribute is at least 7 points, the constitution is as high as 10 points, and the intelligence, which is the nerve reaction speed, is 11 points. Such terrifying physical fitness allows him to even perform quick micromanipulation after issuing the secret weapon moves to control the killing effect of the secret weapon. Just like that. The strength of those tentacles lies in their speed, power and immense slime toxicity, but none of that matters to Garen. The characteristic of Water Bird Fist is that it can stimulate blood upon contact, achieving the purpose of direct explosion damage. Damu has taken this explosive characteristic to its extreme, causing the opponent to explode violently as long as he touches it, which is more than twice as powerful as the original Water Bird Fist. Hasamon, on the other hand, turned this explosion into a concealed one, directly following the enemy's blood and shaking his heart. To achieve the purpose of weakening the opponent. The more fiercely you fight with him, the heavier the burden on your heart will be, and you will eventually die of myocardial infarction or heart rupture. This is the respective development trend of the two of them. Only Garen still uses the most primitive two-phase Water Bird Fist in his hands. The secrets of Water Bird Fist are 3 moves: Double Swords, White Jade, and Soaring. Among them, Soaring is the ultimate secret, which incorporates the essence of Garan Xafeng. The more masters master the true meaning of Water Bird Fist, the more they can use this move to leverage enough terrifying air power to form an extremely violent turbulent attack. This kind of the turbulence will naturally form the form of a giant bird, which is the proof derived from Xifeng Fist. Moonlit Forest. The 3-headed and 6-armed monster that looked like a huge hill spread one arm forward, and the ribbons on his hands suddenly began to float away, getting bigger and wider, and finally turned into a giant red snake. The giant snake's glowing red eyes looked towards it. With the next glare, 2 laser-like rays of light suddenly swept across, and the trees, rocks, and soil were cut in half. Nizra below was unable to dodge, and the layer of black energy covering her body was suddenly rubbed a little by the red light. As the black energy rolled, it was directly contaminated by the red light and spread into a faint red color, spreading toward Nizra inside. Nizra screamed and threw out a black token in her hand. She immediately escaped from the black air and retreated quickly. The black token exploded in mid-air, leaving no bones left. Before she could feel heartbroken, another hand holding a water bottle was pointed at her from above, with the mouth of the water bottle facing away. Call. Suddenly, a huge force of attraction erupted from the mouth of the water bottle, pulling in countless trees, stones, and soil, flying towards the mouth of the water bottle quickly, shrinking smaller and smaller in mid-air, and then being sucked directly into the bottle. The red water bottle less than 10 meters high was like a bottomless pit, absorbing a lot of things and debris, but it showed no signs of filling up. The terrifying pulling force pulled Nizra to fly towards the sky. She desperately grabbed some strong tree roots around her, but whatever she grabbed, she was pulled up by the suction force and flew towards the water bottle. Finally, seeing herself flying higher and higher, a trace of cruelty flashed in her eyes. The left arm suddenly broke at the root and fell off automatically. Her whole body blurred for a moment, and a strange rotating text appeared on her forehead. It disappeared in a flash, and her body suddenly disappeared from where it was. In an instant, she appeared in the air more than 20 meters away. In the middle, it fell hard. The blood from the wound on his arm was flying in the air. Nizra gritted her teeth to hold back the severe pain, rolled and threw herself downwards. Not far away, Manas's arms were gone, and the lower half of one leg was also broken. It was obvious that the lizard had its tail broken off. The method was used 3 times, and it was extremely miserable. Facing a monster with terrifying strength, speed, and resistance, when the gap was too large, they really had no other way to deal with this huge monster except running for their lives. The body of this monster with 3 heads and 6 arms has an astonishing resistance to witchcraft. The 6 weapons have different functions. The dagger can directly kill the opponent from a long distance, and the battle axe can swing out a large net with one blow. The air slash was extremely terrifying. The ribbon can turn into a giant snake and attack automatically. The water bottle can absorb a terrifying amount of objects. The ring represents absolute power. The power is concentrated at one point. If other weapons have the possibility of resistance, then the power of the ring is several times that of other weapons. It's okay if you don't hit, but it's terrible if you hit. The last long stick has a powerful area of effect stun effect. Even if it is swept by the wind brought by the stick, it will cause dull dizziness. In the distant forest, Age's aura was restrained and he was hiding beside a fallen tree trunk. The other two imitated his example, quickly restrained their aura, and their bodies shone a few times, becoming exactly the same as their surroundings. Hush, this monster has no sense of smell, only sight and hearing. If we could avoid it like this at the beginning, it wouldn't be so miserable. Age's voice traveled hundreds of meters and penetrated into the ears of Nizra and Manas. Middle. Is there any way? How to get out of here? Nasira used the same witchcraft to pass the voice over. She glanced at the miserable conditions on herself and Manas, and smiled bitterly. This place is truly a dead place with no way in or out. No wonder the people who have been coming in have not been able to get out. Even us high-ranking people have ended up like this. In fact, compared to lower-level vampires, the upper-level and middle-level vampires are not more powerful in terms of pure power and speed. They focus more on complex and cunning methods, which are difficult to guard against, because at the level of Death Apostles, pure strength has no effect, no matter how strong they are. Are they as powerful as technology bombs, missiles, and nuclear bombs? So in fact, the power of the upper level is not very strong. Just like killing a person, pistol bullets and cannon shells have the same effect. Although the power is very different, the result is the same, so it will no longer develop in this direction. Entering here, you suddenly encounter the existence of such a terrifying monster, and its resistance is so terrible that you can't help but fall into a dilemma. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 711. In the magma hall, on the edge of a stone wall somewhere. Bang. The stone blocking the wall was punched through by an arm, exploding a large amount of dust and gravel. Garen's figure walked out of the gap, naked on the upper body and wearing black trousers and leather shoes on the lower body. He was clean and tidy, and he looked as if he had just changed clothes and went out for a walk, relaxed and relaxed. He looked at the blood clots and broken meat scattered in the hall, his nose twitched, and he smelled the sour smell in the air. In the center of the entire hall, there is a circular garden. From a distance, it is full of terrifying giant plants. Whoosh whoosh. 3 more tentacle ejections came from behind him. Garen grabbed back with one hand, grabbed a tentacle in an instant, and pulled it forward fiercely. Woo! A sharp scream came from a very far away place. The sound wave exceeded the speed of normal sound transmission and reached Garen's ears in an instant. The surrounding gravel walls trembled and shattered in the sound wave, turning into a large amount of dust and debris. When most people hear this sound wave, their eardrums will be shattered in an instant, and their brains will be directly shaken into a concussion and coma. But Garen just frowned slightly and pulled his tentacle forward again. Boom! With a crisp sound, the tentacle in his hand was torn off by him. He threw it away and landed on the ground with a bang. The other 2 tentacles began to shrink back when Garen grabbed the tentacles, as if they had their own independent consciousness, curling back, and they were actually afraid. Garen looked back and noticed this. Interesting, there was a strange arc at the corner of his mouth. Don't add unnecessary complications. Hesaz's words rang out, stopping him from going back to track down the roots of the tentacles. If I guess correctly, these tentacles should be parasitic tentacles produced in this entire place. They are connected to this cave underground palace and are equivalent to the organs of the entire underground palace. Unless you completely destroy the underground palace, you will not be able to kill them all. Isn't there something I can harvest here? Garen frowned. Go to that garden and have a look. There is a teleportation wave there, maybe it is the entrance to other places, Hesaz said softly. Garen jumped up, avoiding the magma gaps on the ground as light as a bird, and flew towards the green garden in the center. After a few breaths, he slowly landed on the top of the white garden wall and looked inside. The strange scene in the entire garden suddenly appeared before his eyes. Inside the garden center, there are no giant flowers and plants at all, but a twisted vortex of black light. The vortex is constantly rotating, emitting a black light aperture, and the edges are constantly transforming into huge giant plants, which unexpectedly form spontaneously. A huge garden. No wonder I said there is no water and no light here. Where do all these green plants come from? It turns out they are all illusions like bait, Garen suddenly realized. This is a void flower seed. There is a small world hidden inside it together with other spaces you can go in and have a look. This thing is not dangerous, it is just a simple teleportation entrance. Hessaz is well informed, and there seems to be nothing he doesn't know. Garen nodded. He and Hessaz had 2 lives, so there was no need to worry about the other party harming him. As soon as he stepped forward, he jumped up and headed straight towards the black light. When he was still halfway in the air, he felt the huge suction force of Eviscerate pulling him violently. His speed suddenly accelerated, and he rushed into the black light vortex in an instant. Disappeared in Buddha Mother. Holy Phoenix. AG stroked the carvings on the surface of a huge tree, with indescribable horror in his eyes. This is actually the land of the Buddha Mother and the Holy Phoenix. His lips trembled, seeming to be in extreme surprise. Nizra and Manas were not far behind, their auras restrained, and only the strong smell of blood filled the air. Their figures were no different from the surrounding trees, completely hidden. Buddha Mother, Holy Phoenix? What is that? Nasira used some methods to treat the injuries to curb the worsening of internal bleeding. At this time, he looked at AG tiredly, and he seemed to have discovered some of the origins of this place. The giant's footsteps were still trembling in the distance, and what the 3 of them were thinking about most now was how to get out of here. The exclamation on AG's face quickly returned to calm, but the shock in his eyes still remained, without diminishing at all. Among the myths, there is an ancient sect in the East. The most fundamental source of the sect is a terrifying existence known as the Mother Buddha. It is said that this existence was spread together with the birth of the vampire race. They are myths of the same era. The product. The Holy Phoenix refers to a secret method of that section. The Holy Phoenix heavenly clothes means the divine bird covered with Buddha's light, or the feathers brought by the divine bird. This may be one thing, or it may be a kind of inheritance. Unfortunately, that sect has now become a completely ordinary section. It no longer has the glory of that time. I didn't expect that their past history is still preserved here. Myths. Things in myths actually exist in reality. Nisara's eyes widened in disbelief. That's like suddenly telling someone that the oil lamp in front of you is the legendary Aladdin's lamp. It's simply unbelievable. I have also heard that in the Indian mythology of Buddhism, the Buddha's mother is the Holy Phoenix. The Holy Phoenix is revered as the Peacock King, and is also known as the Buddha's mother. It is said that she swallowed the Buddha lotus, and finally wailed for 10 days and nights, and gave birth to a child. One son is the Buddha, Manas said in a weak voice. I once visited the main Buddhist temple, but since I didn't find anything extraordinary, I thought it was just a myth. I didn't expect it. Click. A blue electric light flashed, immediately attracting the attention of the 3 people. He raised his head and looked towards the electric sky. In the moonlit sky at night, streaks of blue lightning flashed slowly, and the hissing sound of electricity continued to interweave into a large network of blue electricity. In the center of the entire network, an eye of electricity that was as tall as a person slowly opened and turned into a black vortex door. A vague figure slowly walked out of the door. It's Galleons. His eyes were blank, as if he still hadn't figured out what was going on. Buzz. A huge shadow slammed towards him. It was the ring weapon in the hands of the 3-headed and 6-armed giant. The sound and movement of the electric current attracted the attention of not only the 3 AGS, but also the giants nearby. Without saying a word, it swung the most powerful ring and smashed it directly. Huh, Garen raised his head, and the dazzling halo of electricity in his eyes gradually dissipated, and he immediately saw the huge ring hit by the attack. It's a dimensional creature, ha ha ha, God will not kill us, kill it and get the core and we can get out of here. Hesse suddenly became excited and shouted in Garen's mind. Garen took a deep breath, and a huge vortex of airflow formed, swallowing up countless air around him. Just by the aura of terror pressing down on his head, he knew that he couldn't stand still. First star. The 5 fingers of his right hand instantly traced several acupuncture points on his chest. Second star, more than a dozen acupuncture points were activated. Third star. Call. Garen's hair stood up all over his body, and his muscles all over his body were horribly bulging, forming outlines that looked like armor. His entire body had grown taller, and his hands became as big as an average person's head. There was no move at all, just a flat upward movement, and the fist with his right arm was also smashed towards the ring. Turning on the third star, Garen's original strength of 7 points suddenly increased to about 20 points. This punch seemed ordinary, but the fist passed through the air, causing circles of transparent shock waves, which was extremely powerful. The power is accompanied by the concussive ripples generated by the secret martial arts skills. How dare he go head-on? Nizra had tried how powerful that force was. The power of the ring was at least 2 to 3 times that of other weapons, and it also had a vortex-like pulling force, which made people feel uncomfortable. It's hard to dodge and get out of the way. At this moment, seeing Garen facing the giant's ring without any change of expression, she felt that her heart was beating a little slowly, and her whole body was beating hard. Compared with the galleon's height of less than 3 meters and the giant who is dozens of meters tall across from him, the gap between an elephant and an ant is simply that. But even with such a gap, they still dare to challenge it openly. AG turned sideways and stared at the sky in astonishment, with some unknown luster flashing in his eyes. Manas gritted his teeth and stared at Garen, as if he were looking at a dead man. At this moment, a bright light suddenly flashed across the sky, and a white light like a knife mark suddenly crossed the giant's ring. Garen actually crossed the ring in an instant and appeared behind the giant's arm, standing in the air. He stretched his body, paused for a moment, and then fell straight down. Ah! The giant actually let out a dull roar. Boom! The arm of the ring exploded directly, sputtering out a stream of yellow gas, but it didn't explode. The giant seemed to be angry, and its remaining 5 arms slammed towards Galleon from different directions at the same time. Different weapon effects were activated at the same time, and a layer of blood filled the air. 5 rays of blood suddenly gathered together, turning into a giant hand of blood cloud, pressing towards Garen's location. Bang 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 bang. Buzzing. Violent explosions continued, overlapping, and later turned into an inaudible buzzing sound. Huge vibrations on the ground continued to spread in all directions. The 6 arms of the 3-headed and 6-armed giant exerted terrifying speed, bringing out countless after-images of their arms. They waved them countless times in an instant, and it seemed as if they had turned into thousands of arms, just like the 1,000-armed Guanyin. Under the gathering red light, the huge bloody hand was like a towering pillar, slamming down to where Garen was. Boom! The terrifying shock caused a large number of surrounding trees to collapse and break. Nizla and the 3 of them had to quickly retreat further away, but they were also shaken by the huge shock and their blood boiled. The 4th star. A clear sound penetrated the air in an instant, overcame the vibration, and spread clearly to every inch of the surrounding area. The voice was calm and cold, with an unspeakable cruelty. That's Galleons. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 712. Suddenly a warm breeze blew slowly, like a gentle mother's touch, as gentle as silk. There seemed to be an invisible shriek in the sky. It was the song of birds. A terrifying vortex of air gathered on the ground below the giant, like a huge airflow mouth, waiting to swallow the giant's arm. Grumble. A crisp bird song suddenly rose. Here we go again. That move, AG's eyes flashed, staring at any abnormal changes in the air. The secret of water bird fist, evil phoenix soaring, Nizra has also remembered the horror of this move. I am afraid that after the last experience, no one who has seen this move will forget the power of this move. And terror. At this moment, the huge vortex of air suddenly opened its two wings, and a huge shadow of a flying bird flew up from the ground. It seemed to be slow but was actually fast, and rushed towards the forehead of the giant's head in front. The giant bird's shadow has even reached the point where it is as tall as a giant. But a strange scene occurred. When the huge three-headed six-armed giant saw this huge flying bird shadow, a very obvious look of panic appeared on its face. It quickly took a few steps back, trying to avoid the attack, but to no avail. The attacks of the giant's arms stopped at this moment, and its three heads fell down together, showing expressions of begging for mercy and awe. Phoenix, for the first time, a sound different from awe appeared in the giant's mouth. Phoenix. Phoenix. Phoenix, the three heads shouted one syllable at the same time. The huge flying bird suddenly approached the giant's head, but in an instant, its beak suddenly hovered less than 1 meter away from the giant's head and stopped moving forward. Boom! The terrifying airflow suddenly dispersed, and Garen gently landed on the ground in front of the giant. Phoenix, the giant raised his arms high, and with three heads on the ground, he knelt on the ground in a gesture of submission. I think he mistook you for his former master. Hessaz whispered into Garen's ear. The giant's head looked huge in front of Garen, casting a black shadow that almost covered him. At this moment, one of the giant's smiling faces turned around to face Garen. He opened his mouth and spit out a black tongue, with an exquisite and luxurious blood-colored throne embedded on the tip of the tongue. Garen hesitated for a moment and glanced at the giant. His intuition felt that the other party had no ill intentions. Go straight up and slowly sit on the chair. Click. After a crisp sound, something on the chair suddenly seemed to be triggered. The giant's tongue suddenly contracted and he retracted the chair into his mouth. Garen was immediately brought into the giant's mouth from the outside moonlight. Not just the mouth, the seat seemed to be sliding downwards in the darkness. He seemed to have entered a passage that went down like an elevator. There were blue lights all around that were twinkling like stars. This is probably a huge war weapon that can move freely and can be controlled by you. Hessaz's somewhat solemn voice came from Garen's ears. It's a miracle that there are no traces of void creatures at all. There is such a terrifying advanced civilization here. You haven't even seen him, Garen asked in a low voice. No, Hessaz said firmly. This civilization is very powerful. These light spots flashing on the wall are actually energy matrices. They can spontaneously absorb external energy, whether it is light energy, wind energy, or temperature. It is really terrifying technology. Using a single energy we are all very relaxed, but to be able to superimpose and fuse so many medium energy matrices together using a method that I cannot understand, this is completely the pinnacle of the development of another civilization. There was a kind of shock in Hessaz's tone, which Garen had never heard before. Hessaz was one of the ancient demon kings of Yindua. Standing at the pinnacle of a civilization, his vision was naturally unmistakable. His tone has always been scary, but now he was actually calmed down by this three-headed and six-armed man. Hearing what you said, I suddenly felt a little hopeful. A smile appeared on Garen's face. He finally came to this underground palace and had hope of not returning empty-handed. Hope so. Hessaz is also looking forward to it. The seat continued to slide down with galleons, and soon a soft golden light appeared in front of it. The golden light is getting closer and bigger. Whoosh! The seat rushed into the golden light, clicked along the slide below, and seemed to be embedded with some mechanism, and stopped instantly. Garen's eyes slightly adjusted to the glare of the golden light. He quickly saw the scenery within the golden light clearly. Here is a golden round room of medium size. His seat was supported in mid-air by a pillar, and was located exactly in the center of the room. All around are various mysterious symbols engraved in gold on the walls, flashing and flashing, constantly releasing golden light. There is a faint scent of sandalwood in the surrounding air, and there are faint sounds of chanting slowly. The symbols around are in Sanskrit. I can understand them. Do you need me to translate them for you? Hesai's tone was slightly urgent. No need. Galen himself was already a master of linguistics, having learned Sanskrit when he was a teenager. He glanced at the text around him. Thousands of densely packed words only tell one thing. A being named Holy Phoenix created the Buddha Mother and gave her life and consciousness. Then she died in a battle with foreign enemies, and only the Buddha Mother survived. A large number of words are all praising the supremacy, light, and love of the Holy Phoenix, but there is no other information. That's true. Hesas didn't know what to say. In the universe of time and space, countless splendid and powerful civilizations appear and disappear, like bright ephemerals that pass away overnight. I don't know what is the real eternity. Garen sat silently on his seat. For some reason, he felt an inexplicable aura lingering around him. Even if you cultivate yourself to exist like a diamond, it will perish with the effacement of time and space, he said in a low voice, suddenly stood up, stood in front of the seat, and looked around at the golden runes. The shapes of the runes were constantly memorized in his mind. Something strange happened. These runes spontaneously disintegrated into golden threads, and were rewoven into brand new words in his mind. It is a kind of true meaning that is somewhat similar to his secret martial arts water bird fist, a kind of pure consciousness, and this consciousness echoes in these brand new words. He simply closed his eyes and relaxed his mind and body to realize the true meaning. Those golden words seemed to form golden lotus flowers in his mind, constantly spinning, dancing and floating. Holy Phoenix Scripture. After looking at the entire golden text, Garen opened his eyes and let out a deep breath. This is a way of practice that is completely different from that of secret martial arts. Because the body structure of the other person's practice is different from mine, we cannot learn it. However, we can learn from its true meaning. This powerful consciousness and direction are just like Nadia's. Just like the fierce sky Beiji Deo, we can also learn from the practice method of a certain existence in the void that has survived for an unknown period of time. He soon had a plan in mind. What these golden runes record is the Holy Phoenix Scripture practiced by the legendary Holy Phoenix. This kind of scripture is absolutely domineering. In heaven and on earth, I am the only one who is supreme. No one can surpass it. No one can stand shoulder to shoulder. This extremely overbearing artistic conception is far inferior to the will of the nine-headed dragon of the void in the soul. Garen had a vague feeling that this civilization might have something to do with the Buddhism spread on earth, otherwise the Buddhist atmosphere carried by these familiar words would not suddenly exist in this world. Are you going to go this way? Hesaz's voice came. The road to Overlord, this is the road Nadia took, but in the end she was defeated and the Legion was destroyed. It will be countless times more difficult to move forward. There must be no failure on this road. The pursuit of absolute purity of thoughts and souls, only keeping oneself. And nothing else. In my heart, everything is useless. Garen read out a verse from the Holy Phoenix Scripture. What are the side effects of practicing the Holy Phoenix Scripture? According to my estimation, this Holy Phoenix Scripture is more domineering than Nadia's fierce sky tyranny plus the will of the nine-headed dragon king. It is simply a method of practice that should not exist in this world. If you want to take this path on the road, you must be prepared to face countless enemies. As long as you exist, even the heaven, earth, and universe will not be tolerated by you. Your existence itself is a challenge and subversion of the rules. Since you don't tolerate anyone else who is stronger than you, then these beings will inevitably become your enemies. These are countless resistances that are inevitable. He paused and said, "It's like a rushing river. Everyone is going down the river, but we practitioners are going upstream." But this Holy Phoenix Sutra is even crazier. It actually wants to rush directly to the source of the river and occupy the river, the ultimate source, above all existence. This is obviously impossible. Garen shook his head. Yes, but because this will is too high, even if it is not achieved, the existence of this civilization will be extremely terrifying, Hesaz affirmed. Although it is not suitable for you to practice, if you can integrate its true meaning and add it to your boxing technique, it will reach a whole new level. Perhaps it is not difficult to achieve a soul seed. Soul seed? Garen's heart was filled with excitement. He collected masks in order to suppress nausea, compiled grimoires in order to condense soul seeds, and now there was another road in front of him. The grimoire does not conflict with this. You can completely integrate and understand the true meaning of the Holy Phoenix scripture, and then merge into the grimoire to create a soul seed of higher strength. I estimate that if you fully understand the true meaning of the Holy Phoenix after fusion and record it in the magic book, you should be able to achieve the second soul seed, or be able to have a real battle with Nadia's first 30 lives. Hesaz seems to have great respect for this scripture. The most important thing is, if we don't understand this Holy Phoenix scripture, we won't be able to get out. Garen shook his head slightly and showed a wry smile. Just understand the method for activating the dimensional movement of this war machine should exist in the true meaning of the Holy Phoenix. The only thing you have to be careful about is that this true meaning may affect your will and soul. Therefore, it must be integrated into the soul seed in the end, otherwise it will limit your future development, because this is not your path, but someone else's path. Understood. Garen nodded. He sat down on the chair again, placed his hands flat on the armrests, closed his eyes, and countless lotus flowers were flying in his heart, like snowflakes in winter. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 713. Outside World. The three of them sat around a lit bonfire, none of them speaking. The firelight shone on the faces of the three people, not much warmth, but a faint feeling of restlessness. Besides this monster with 3 heads and 6 arms, there are definitely other troubles here. After cultivating for a while, AG whispered. The surrounding woods are gloomy, and there is a strange and inexplicable atmosphere in the woods. You don't know what happened to the monster's stomach after Galleon entered it. Nizra frowned and looked at the huge monster in the distance. The 3-headed and 6-armed monster had been motionless since Galleon entered it just now. But the 3 of them still didn't dare to get close to the past. If the monster moved again, they would not be able to escape again without paying a heavier price when they were all seriously injured. Don't forget the purpose of our coming in. AG stood up and began to wander among the surrounding grass and trees. His face was gloomy and he looked a little pale. It seemed that he had been injured by a monster just now, but at this time, there was a flash of light in his eyes from time to time. A trace of joy. If I guess correctly, this is the real garden of this underground palace. He bent down and gently cut a piece of black grass that was as black as ink and shaped like a little man from the foot of a big tree. Then he put it in his pocket and continued to look for something. Because no one has entered here for many years, the medicinal herbs growing there are so powerful. Nasira and Manas looked at each other in confusion. Neither of them knew much about medicinal herbs. They just watched AG collecting medicinal herbs on the side, and soon walked further and further away. More than half an hour later, when they took out some dry food to bake and eat, AG over there had already collected a large bag of medicinal materials and returned. Looking at the obvious joy on his face, you know that he must have gained a lot. If I can get out this time, my cultivation will definitely enter the final stage. He got a lot of rare medicinal materials without any effort. No matter how calm he was, he couldn't help but show signs of a qualitative change. As for the injuries of the broken limbs of Manas and Nizra, it is not difficult for the wizard to find a limb from another person to reconnect. What matters is whether it is safe or not. After collecting the medicinal materials, The three people's eyes fell on the huge monster in the distance again. They didn't know when Garen would come out, or whether Garen had fallen into the monster's trap and was trapped inside. But now all they can do is wait. If my guess is correct, this monster should be the second guard here. There must be many secrets hidden in this monster. We'd better wait for Galleon to come out before making a decision, AG whispered. Holding his hand, Lee took out two bone plates from unknown animals and smashed them lightly on the ground. Several cracks suddenly appeared on them. This seemed to be some kind of divination method. He carefully identified the cracks under the firelight. I didn't expect that the three of us would be trapped here, but that ordinary human being would be trapped here instead. Nasira smiled bitterly. What do you think about Galen and the Holy Fist Palace? AG asked in a low voice. Nisra smiled bitterly, while Manas shook his head, looking incomprehensible. Manas looked at the huge monster in the distance. I don't know how to describe that person, but as an ordinary human being, not a wizard or a vampire, it is simply incredible for him to reach such a height. He paused. As for the Holy Fist Palace, I think there will definitely be a place for him in the extraordinary world in the future. His tone of voice was close to an unequivocal affirmation. The dead apostles will not let him go. The vampire clan is still the only one in the family. AG shook his head. It's not that easy. But who knows some things? Nisra was seriously injured at this time and lost her usual arrogance. I don't know why, but I don't like standing with that Garen. He has a very dangerous feeling about him. Same. I don't know what is hidden in that person. AG nodded. Bang. Suddenly, the three-headed and six-armed monster in the distance stood up slowly, stood up again from its kneeling position, and its three heads shook slightly. What is he going to do? Nisla and the other three stood up and looked at the monster from a distance. Garen closed his eyes tightly, and a faint golden light slowly gathered around his body. These golden lights were flying and rotating around him like golden threads. He suddenly felt as if he had turned into a huge golden bird at this moment, like a phoenix, soaring and swimming in the endless void. Waves of vague and unusual Sanskrit chanting sounds came into his ears continuously, as if many people were sitting around him and chanting scriptures softly. The Holy Scripture of the Holy Phoenix, the true meaning of the Holy Phoenix. Garen's mind fell into an absolutely pure state of self-perception. All feelings and thoughts were all contracted inside his body. The only one who could perceive was himself, and the only one who could think was still himself. He closed his eyes and saw that the secret martial arts skills he majored in had a faint golden rune on the skill column in his attribute column. Holy Phoenix Scripture, the inheritance of an unknown civilization. Understanding the true meaning of the Holy Phoenix has a certain chance of increasing the concentration of soul seeds and increasing the strength of the seeds. The soul seed determines the strength of the soul, and the strength of the soul determines the limit of physical fitness. Garen's current physical limit is an average of 30 points, which was enhanced by the first soul seed. The soul has three major stages. According to ancient Yinduo inheritance, 1. Ordinary soul. 2 soul seeds. 3 true spirit. Every time the soul seed condenses, it means the condensation of a complete and powerful realization to a certain extent, a life, a complete experience, and even an independent personality. It can be said that every soul seed represents a peak concentration of oneself, and represents a life path and trajectory of one's attempts to succeed. Garen didn't know how other Gaian-Duo warlocks walked this path, but only by condensing all the essence of a life could he reach a certain height and condense it into a complete seed. The more you focus on understanding and condense the soul seeds, the greater the possibility of becoming a true spirit. Each soul seed can be used as a soul substitute for you to resist a fatal attack on your soul. Hesaz's voice rang in Garen's ears. The combination of the true meaning of the Holy Phoenix and the insights from the grimoire has reached the intensity of condensing soul seeds. This is also what Hesaz expects to see. The achievement of the second soul seed is the moment when Galleon as a whole reaches a higher level. At that time, buzz. Suddenly, A violent vibration interrupted Hessaz's thoughts. He suddenly formed a black smoke figure behind Garen and looked around. I saw wisps of golden gas filling the entire inside of the monster Buddha Mother. A large amount of golden gas began to slowly gather in front of Galleon, becoming more and more solid, and soon formed a golden diamond-shaped crystal suspended in mid-air. A golden arc flashed on the surface of the crystal, and a little bit of the outside world slowly emerged. Garen slowly opened his eyes and felt that his whole body was wrapped in a warm motion, as if he was under the midday sun or soaked in hot spring water. His eyes were hit by two rays of golden light emitted from the spar, which reflected in his pupils and quickly passed through a series of dense messages. All the information about this monster suddenly flooded into his eyes. A hint of understanding suddenly appeared on Garen's face. This information indeed explains the origin of this monster, and also explains how to leave this Jedi. This monster with 3 heads and 6 arms is called Buddha Mother, and it was indeed created by a being named Holy Phoenix. The strange thing is that the information of this Holy Phoenix is indeed similar to the secret of Water Bird Fist, the soaring of the evil phoenix. In addition, the Buddha Mother was too old, her memory was confused, and her consciousness was extremely simple, so she mistook her for the former Holy Phoenix and surrendered without any resistance. Is there a way out? Hessaz asked. Indeed, it is, but it's a bit troublesome. Garen frowned. If you want to go out, you must consume a huge amount of energy. The Buddha Mother's own ability is not enough, and I need to actively burn part of my life energy. Life energy? Yes, Garen nodded. It is equivalent to the biological energy in a living body. Normal humans naturally don't have it. However, I am strong and my physique is strong enough, so it is nothing. He estimated that according to the judgment given by the Buddha Mother, if he wanted to go out, he would not only have to give up the huge body of the Buddha Mother, but he would also have to give up part of his body's life energy, which is equivalent to the chi, blood, essence, and blood in the secret martial arts. Fortunately, he still has potential points that can be used as supplements. If it were another person, he would probably be suffocated to death here. Jia Long pondered for a while, followed the method recorded by the Buddha Mother, and his mind moved. Buzz. The whole space suddenly shook slightly. The huge Buddha Mother stood up slowly, shook her head and 6 arms, like a hill, and slowly looked towards the direction of Ag and the 3 of them. There was a swipe on the right shoulder of the Buddha Mother, and a vague figure suddenly appeared. It was the shirtless Garen. The muscles on his body were tangled, like black armor, and his whole body was filled with a terrifying aura. Ag, I need your help if I want to get out of here. Garen's voice spread far away, through the large woods, and directly to where the 3 Ag campfires were. Galen the Ag-3 stood up. Do you know how to get out? Ag's eyes flashed with surprise and joy. Of course. Garen jumped lightly and jumped directly from the Buddha Mother, who was dozens of meters high. With the roar of the wind, he smashed a small hole in the ground and half knelt on the ground. Standing up, he stepped forward, spanning more than 10 meters almost in a flash. In just 10 seconds, his figure appeared directly in front of the 3 people. That monster, Ag glanced at the monster in the distance with fear. It's called Buddha Mother, and it can help us get out of here. Garen didn't mean to explain more. The Buddha Mother is actually a living creature with simple intelligence. Because of her absolute loyalty to the Holy Phoenix, she has been hiding here for countless years without leaving. What do you want us to do? Ag transferred his fear of the Buddha's mother to the man in front of him. It was obvious that Garen was now able to control the extremely powerful guy in the distance. Leaving here will not only consume all the energy of that big guy, but also require us to burn a certain amount of power to support him. Garen deliberately said all the energy and briefly introduced the situation. According to the records inside, there is a more troublesome existence in the deepest part of Unil Garden, but there is no need for us to go deeper. This is a typical cyclic space. If we want to break this cycle, we must concentrate the strongest power at once. A point of space converges, forming a distortion and a brief hole, before you can take the opportunity to leave. Garen explained. My strength alone is simply not enough. Although the Buddha Mother's ability accounts for the vast majority of the consumption, we only need to fill in a little bit, but even this little bit is not something I can bear alone. How can you ensure that what you say is accurate? Nizra asked in a deep voice. We have no choice, Garen said calmly. No need to say more, let's get ready, AG directly ordered. He was the leader of the three of them. He agreed and directly set the direction.